I can tell you a story about an employee that I had at one point in my business, and we used to do all kinds of fun stuff, and it was like my sales team. And so one of our contests that we had, don't judge me because that's why I'm smiling right now, is a party bus. So everybody who hit a certain sales goal could actually qualify for this party bus trip. And I'm saying party bus, I'm saying yes, all of the above. Everything you think about when a party bus existed. I'm talking about Jell-O shots, I'm talking about snacks, I'm talking about we hit like different places, we partied it up, we did hookah, we did all kinds of stuff. But there was an employee that had a health condition, and I was sort of aware of the health condition, but not completely aware of the health condition. And we were doing Jell-O shots, and alcohol has high levels of sugar. So our last stop, I come out of this bar, and I am not joking. There is like the need for an ambulance to be called. All right. I'm not saying that it's hard to hang out with CP. I'm just saying that if you're hanging out with CP, you need to be ready. Okay. Hey there, my loves. Welcome back to my channel and CPTV, the place for current and aspiring entrepreneurs who want to start and grow their businesses and passions in order to experience the true financial decision-making and lifestyle freedom of entrepreneurship. I'm Cheryl, or CP, and today we are going to be talking about what you really need to have when you are trying to grow your team and your business. And when I say what you really need to have, I'm really talking about the forms, right? I get the question all the time from clients, from friends, from folks who just kind of want to know and pick my brain. Cheryl, when I'm hiring somebody, I feel like there's this huge list of stuff that you have to have, and I'm always confused about what I have to have, what I need to have, what I should have. What are the new hire forms, and is there a checklist or something you can give me? So I am here today to walk everybody, including you guys out there, especially if you are in the thick of it as an entrepreneur and you are ready to delegate some of that crap so you can get to that lifestyle freedom point of entrepreneurship that we're talking about, and you're growing your team. I'm going to give you the specifics of exactly what your new hire forms should look like, and give you an actual checklist that you can download below to use in that process. So make sure that you kind of hit the description box, hit that little arrow, takes you down in the description box where you can see all the stuff, and you click on that link and you'll be able to download that form, my free gift to you. You're welcome, because I love you guys so much. And I'm also going to walk you through kind of what those forms are, why, so that you can really understand what you need to do moving forward as an entrepreneur. So let's dive in. So I like to put my new hire forms checklist into very specific categories. And so there's really three. There is you must do for compliance forms. It's the can do for your company and cultural needs forms. And then there's also the should do for protection and growth forms. So I'm going to put all of these forms in those categories for you so that you kind of know the ones that you have to do, you want to make sure you're getting, the ones that you really should do in order to grow your company, and then obviously the ones that you can do that kind of add a little spice to it. I do recommend them, but you don't have to necessarily do them when you're hiring someone new. So let's start with your must-do forms. And this is always interesting to people because there aren't very many in the must-do section. I do break up your must-do forms depending upon the type of new hire you have coming on. Some of you out there will be looking at expanding your team with a W-2 employee, so that person's going to be over here. And some of you out there are looking at expanding your team with an independent contractor, a freelancer, you're outsourcing someone, a VA, whatever it is. So that person's going to go over here. There are forms that you really must do in both of those categories. So I'm going to start with the W-2 category. Your must-do forms. Your W-2s, you got to get a W-4, which is the tax status and the exemption type of form, where they will actually complete it, and that's the one where they kind of tell you how many dependents they have, so that you can ultimately then register that with your payroll company and know what their tax bracket is or what taxes should be taken out of their pay. And then also the I-9 form. And the I-9 form is directly related to immigration and whether or not the person that you're hiring is able to legally work in the United States. There's been I want to say 4 different versions of this I-9 form in just the last 3 years. So you want to make sure that you're using the most current, up-to-date I-9. And it's the one where you got to kind of see someone's driver's license or their birth certificate. You can use that, or you can use their passport, or you can use all these different documents from both a list A and a list B or C. And as long as they bring those documents in and complete that I-9, that's your verification that they're legally able to work in the United States and that you know that you're hiring someone who's here legally. So that I-9 form is really important. Now, when talking about 1099 contractors or the folks that you might be outsourcing to, even vendors nowadays, I also get these forms. Anyone who is an independent contractor that I'm actually paying, they're not necessarily an employee of mine, you want to make sure you get a W-9, and that allows them to give you their information for tax purposes so that you can actually file that paperwork, issue a 1099 at the end of the year so that you can actually deduct that expense, which is why a lot of vendors, people that I do vending with, is also in that category. If I'm outsourcing a service to you and you're doing it for me and I'm paying you, I want to be able to deduct that for tax purposes. So I'm going to have you fill out a W-9. It's different than W-4 because it doesn't ask for exemptions and dependents, but it basically asks for your basic information, your address, and then also a tax ID or social security number. And then I also recommend with an independent contractor, a must-do form is a contractor agreement. That basically is the agreement that you'll have with that person that states indemnification, who's responsible for what, who's liable for different things that happen. And it also clearly states that the relationship between you and that person is of independent contractor nature and that they're not an employee for you. Because I did a whole nother video on the differences between 1099 and W-2. So I'm not going to dive too specific into that. So if you want to check that out, I'll put that up here in the cards for you. But it really does dive into the IRS, the status, what you've got to watch out for, and who you should be hiring. And that contractor agreement is really going to be explicit in its sense that it says this person is an independent contractor and we're not crossing the line over into an actual employee of the organization. Now let's talk about your should do forms. And when I say should do, I mean just that. You don't gotta do it, but you should in order to protect yourself, and also to make sure that you're growing your company and that you're building credibility and that you're just handling your business the right way from an HR perspective. So let's dive into what the should do forms are. The first should do form is a signed offer letter. I do talk about offer letters in a whole nother video. I'll link to that up here, obviously. Why they're important is because the offer letter will explicitly describe the position that you are offering to someone else. It also has specific details in it about at will employment, depending upon your state, some specific stuff. But it basically is a signed document from that person stating, this is my job, this is the position that I'm accepting, this is the salary that I'm accepting, these are the expectations, and we all agree. So a signed offer letter is very important in your should do forms. Also, another should do form that I like to recommend, depending upon the type of business that you have, is a completed job application. When someone comes in for an interviewing process with you, I recommend that you give them an actual job application to complete, especially if you do drug testing or background checking, or if you intend to do any kind of credit checking. That document is going to be really important in giving you basic information about the person and the candidate, getting you address information, contact information. They can also check off some boxes to talk about whether or not they've got experience in different areas. It also gives authorization for you to check their references that you're going to ask them for you to go out and check their previous employment. And in some instances, although I think there should be a whole separate document, there'll also be a paragraph in there that talks about their understanding that you will do a background check, you will do a drug screening, and that their actual ability to stay in the position, if they're offered the position, is dependent upon the results of those two things. So it's kind of a clear, line of demarcation that says, by filling this out, you understand that I'm getting this information, you're giving me authorization to have all of your personal information, and here's the expectations of what's going to kind of happen next. Now, the next should do form that I recommend is a direct deposit authorization. Okay, so why is this a should do form? Well, it's really about an efficiency thing. And take it from someone who has run payroll for years. Payroll sucks. All right, it sucks. But what sucks even more than regular payroll is payroll that involves the issuing and the printing of checks. Sucks even worse. So a direct deposit authorization is automatic. Most payroll companies and services that you will use will automatically have direct deposit as a part of their packages. They'll actually charge you more if you don't do direct deposit with employees, and they'll actually charge you additional fees for having to print checks. It just really makes the whole situation of payroll that's already kind of a shitty thing to have to go through even more shitty. So a direct deposit authorization is really important, and it basically tells the employee, look, you ain't got no choice, all right? Your check gonna be direct deposit. It makes it easy for me. It makes my life easy, and it allows you to really enjoy the lifestyle that we're talking about, entrepreneur. If you have to print checks and physically hand them out to employees, you can't be in Miami on the beach doing payroll. I can be in Miami on the beach doing payroll because I've done it before, but you can't. So let's set you up where your lifestyle is going to be impacted, and direct deposit authorizations is on that list. Another should do form is a background check and drug testing authorization. Now, this form can be a must do form. It just depends on you as a business if you require those and if you do them. If you don't do background checks and drug screenings, then this isn't necessarily a must-do form. However, if you plan on implementing any kind of drug-free workplace policy that says you could do random drug testing, or if there's an injury that occurs on the job, we're going to automatically do a drug test to see if you're intoxicated. It's a nice thing to get in the very beginning of hiring someone as a new hire form, just in case. So basically, they're signing off to give you authorization to at any point do a drug screening in the event that something goes down, even if you don't do it initially. And then obviously a background check, they have to give you authorization to get that information, and they need to sign off that they understand that you can use that information to change the status of their employment with your organization. So whether you do them in the very beginning or not, I recommend you should get them just so that you have them on file. In the event that you as the employer have a situation occur and you need to be able to pivot and redirect, all of a sudden you like, no, I'm background checking all my employees because somebody came to work acting a fool one day and I don't really know what's going on with them. So you ultimately will already have those authorizations so that you can just roll that out and do it. And that also applies if you need to do a driver's record check, like a DMV check. Any of those types of authorizations to get my personal information type of check forms, I would say is a should do form. You don't have to, but you definitely should do it just to protect yourself and give yourself some flexibility into the future of your business. Other should do forms that I recommend that you get is a signed employee handbook or other employment policy types of sign off, receipt types of documents. Now, it's a should do because it's not really mandatory, but honestly, I contemplated whether or not I should put this form in the must do category, because if you are giving out an employee manual, and it really shouldn't be an if, it should be an absolutely. An employee manual is something that's critical to the overall success of your HR at your employer, at your business, but also it can be used against you in a court of law in some instances. So it's a very important document. And you ultimately want the employee to sign off that they've read it, that they've understood it, and that everything has been clearly laid out to them. Because that's going to be the document that when you're making decisions about what to handle from a human resource perspective in your business, that's the document that everybody's going to refer to. So you need to have someone sign off that they read it and that they understand it. And that applies to any other company policies that might be extraneous that aren't necessarily included in that employee handbook or that employee manual, like a computer policy or a cell phone policy, or, if you issue laptops to your employees and they have a laptop, or, a safety policy, especially if you have a sales team that's always out in the field and they're driving. All of those things can really impact if something happens, your business insurance, your workers' compensation insurance, hell, sometimes even your health insurance that you're offering to your employees and benefits. So those are important should do forms. And the last of the should do forms is really the employee information form. I say this because a separate employee information form can do wonders for your information, for your ability to move and act, and for your ability to engage your team. When I say an employee information form, I'm just talking about something simple that says, here's my name, here's my address, here's my birthday, right? It's important to know your employees' birthdays, and you wouldn't necessarily just remember that off of tax documents and things like that. This is my emergency contact information. I can tell you a story about an employee that I had at one point in my business, and we used to do all kinds of fun stuff, and it was like my sales team. And so one of our contests that we had, don't judge me because that's why I'm smiling right now, is a party bus. So everybody who hit a certain sales goal could actually qualify for this party bus trip. And I'm saying party bus, I'm saying yes, all of the above. Everything you think about when a party bus existed. I'm talking about Jello shots. I'm talking about snacks. I'm talking about we hit like different places. We partied it up. We did hookah. We did all kinds of stuff. But there was an employee that had a health condition. And I was sort of aware of the health condition, but not completely aware of the health condition. And we were doing Jello shots. I mean, and alcohol has high levels of sugar. So our last stop, I come out of this bar, and I am not joking. There is like the need for an ambulance to be called. All right. You know, I'm not saying that it's hard to hang out with CP. I'm just saying that if you're hanging out with CP, you need to be ready. Okay. But the one thing I realized from that mistake was I did not have any of that employee's emergency contact information. I didn't have the information to call his spouse, his child, nobody to come get him, to come meet him. And I was absolutely freaking out. And that was the point that I realized every single employee needs to have an employee information form that includes emergency contact information. Because if something happens in a situation where it's an emergency, you need to be able to reach out to a family member, call them, and get them into the loop. And that's important for your overall team culture as well. So that's a should do form that I highly recommend. Now let's talk about your can do forms. And the reason why these are can do is because you don't have to do them. They don't really offer you a specific amount of protection or, you know, kind of protect you from making a bunch of CP mistakes like the ones that I've made in the past, but they really do impact overall your organizational culture. And so they're kind of nice things to do and nice things to gather in the very beginning so to impact kind of the future and the growth and the trajectory of your overall team environment. So these can-do forms really boil down to three. The first being employee benefits documents. Now, the reason why this is a can-do form is because you don't have to offer employee benefits when you're a small employer, I should say, because if you're over a certain size, ACA, but I'm not going to get into that whole thing. But it's a can-do form because if you choose to offer a benefits package or an incentive package to your employees, when you're hiring someone during the course of that onboarding or orientation process, and I do address what a complete onboarding process should look like, so I will link to that right here in the cards as well. Check that out. It gives you a step-by-step, even time frame, timeline, and checklist is included for you to use in onboarding. So during the onboarding process, you're definitely going to want to gather the employee benefits information from a new hire, especially as soon as they become eligible, and that they signed off that they either want the benefits or they don't want the benefits so that you have that proof of waiver. So those are definitely some can-do forms. The next can-do form is really any training documents that you want them to sign off on or that you want to get input on, feedback from. And that's really an idea of being able to encourage and let your new hire know that you have a very serious internal training program. And I talk about that in the other video as well, how important it is to have that for your overall organizational culture. But that clearly communicates to that employee, I care about your growth, I care about your skills development, and we really do have a program here in place. So any kind of training documents, skills documents, those types of things kind of fall into this can-do category. And then another nice can-do form is an employee goals or growth related form. So I do encourage every single client that I work with, I do this in my businesses as well. When an employee starts, I like to know what their professional goals are. I like to know, what their personal goals are, because honestly, if I can focus them in on their goals and tie how I'm going to ultimately help them achieve their goals, I have found in my career that that employee will walk through a wall for you. And this is that document that clearly communicates that from the very beginning. Hey, what are some of your goals? What are some of the things that you want to accomplish here? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I want to be clear on what those goals are so that I can help you and devise a plan to mentor you into getting to those goals. So any employee growth or goals or worksheets or forms that you can kind of create that gives you a good idea of where that employee is from a mental perspective is going to be very helpful for you, especially as a part of your new hire forms checklist. So don't leave, because I've got one more thing to talk to you about, and that's my CP impact tip. One more thing that you are going to want to remember that you must do when you are doing a new hire. And it's not necessarily a form, but before I do, if you like this, please take the time to click that little box down there, subscribe, and hit that like button for me. Leave me a comment or some feedback. Ask me your questions. I love helping you, especially as you want to grow your business and achieve that freedom. And I know hiring a team and growing your team gets you to that lifestyle freedom that as an entrepreneur you want. So that's why I love giving these tips and tools. So now that we got that out of the way, here's my CP impact tip, okay? Don't forget to do your new hire reporting. When you have a new employee, you are required to report that new employee to your state automatically. Now, if you have a payroll service that you've hired in order to do payroll, if you've got other employees, then you may already be aware of this fact. But if this is your first W-2 employee, and this might apply to you, or even your second, and you didn't do this the first time, you want to make sure that you are doing and completing your new hire reporting with the state. Confirm with your payroll company that they do it for you, just to make sure. And if they don't, you got to make sure that you do it. Don't assume that your payroll company takes care of it for you, because there's a lot of them out there that don't necessarily do it, and it's required. That's how child support is applied, different taxes, all that kind of stuff. And you, as the employer, can actually get penalized if you do not do your new hire reporting. So that's my CP impact tip. That's also a new hire must do, but it's not necessarily a form as much as it is an action that you have to take. So my loves, don't forget to get that checklist down there in the description. It is going to give you the entire list that we just went over, and it's going to categorize that from must do, should do, and can do. And it's free, and it is all yours. It's my CP gift to you. And go out and implement this stuff with your next hire. Grow your team and grow your business. I'm with you. I'm here to support you. And until next time, my love, mwah.